Let's talk about Donald Trump. Something a little equally as ignorant, but I guess less personal because I don't own any stock in Boeing that I know of. I don't really care. So it's not as personal as this Sheriff Norman issue. But Donald Trump tweeted out, first of all, incorrect information. But that should be no surprise to anyone, right? It's Tuesday. That means there's going to be it's a day that ends with day. So clearly there's an opportunity for Donald Trump to tweet something that's ridiculous. So Donald Trump tweeted out that he wants to cancel the next order of 747 Boeings for Air Force One. And he quoted a price of approximately $4 billion. So the information was wrong. One, in that the cost of the jets, of the airplanes, it's not going to be $4 billion. I think it's somewhere around $2 billion, a lot less. And also these are projects that are already paid for, right? These are projects that have already been allocated in the military budget. And so not only was it wrong, but he doesn't have that authority to do this. Not directly and not at this point. So in the tweet, he said, Boeing is building a brand new 747 Air Force One for future presidents, but costs are out of control. More than $4 billion. Cancel order, according to his tweet. Boeing responded saying that they will give a comment as soon as they can figure out what was going on, which totally makes sense. Like, this probably blindsided the hell out of them. I mean, I don't know that I care so much about the merits of the conversation, about the cost of Air Force One. But what's interesting about this story is how Donald Trump, via Twitter, has the ability to not only set a news cycle, the narrative of a news cycle, but he has an unfiltered gateway into the lives of every American that tunes in online. And what it made me start thinking about was, of course, there's negatives, there's pros, there's cons to this. He's obviously using this in a manner that we've never seen a president do. But of course, I think President Obama was the first president with a Twitter account. Makes sense. Twitter was open like 2007, 2008. I don't know. So President Obama was the first president with a Twitter account. Donald Trump will be the second president. And Donald Trump has already demonstrated that he has a desire to use Twitter as a direct means of communication that gives him the ability to circumvent the media. And it reminded me of, quite literally reminded me of how revolutionary the fireside chats were by Franklin Roosevelt. The radio at the time gave Franklin Roosevelt the ability to speak directly to the audience, to the American population. And it gave him an unfiltered, in a way, it was very direct, unfiltered access into the homes of every American that could afford a radio. This was revolutionary at the time. The radio broadcast actually still continues to this day. President Obama does them every single Saturday, but their effectiveness clearly totally different. But it's not so much about the radio as much as it is a change in technology that gives a president the ability to communicate without control of the media. Now, granted, everything that Donald Trump uses his Twitter account for is almost ridiculously childlike, petulant, and borderline dangerous. But we can't help but to recognize this shift in the usage of this technology. So it's the technology and the way that he specifically uses it that makes this a game changer. It makes it a game changer because he could try to say these same exact things on television, but he'd instantly be bottlenecked by that media outlet's audience and by the way that that media station packages it up. Even if it was a press conference, it's still controlled and, filtered through the lens of the media. Donald Trump knows as he knows exactly how powerful Twitter is, and it is comparable to how powerful the fireside chat was for Franklin Roosevelt. Here's some things that make this troubling, to say the least. Number one, when you have someone as asinine and ridiculous as Donald Trump, who has the ability to talk to, I think he has I don't know how many, 10 million people follow him on Twitter, but that's irrelevant because ultimately there's probably 100 million people who will see a tweet of that of anything he says that is substantive or dangerous. So he has this ability to reach directly into the arms and the hands of almost every American if he wanted to via Twitter. As the president of the United States, his words actually matter, and they matter in a very significant way. He has the ability to say something and change the markets. He has the ability to say something and affect foreign policy. Whether we do or act on it, what he says carries significant weight. And to think that this power is now in the hands of someone who is as petulant as Donald Trump presents a brave new world for the office of the presidency and mass communications. I mean, Trump has an unfettered feed into the social media accounts of millions of Americans and the global community. I mean, he is being listened to by foreign heads of state. He's being listened to by ambassadors. He's being listened to by ministers of defense. He's being listened to by foreign ministers. He's being listened to by everybody. And what does he do? Besides saying impetuously that he wants to cancel this order from Boeing, he's criticizing Saturday Night Live for Alec Baldwin's depiction of him. I mean, I want you to think about it, and think about the responsibility that Donald Trump now has to not be Donald Trump. I think that's the most terrifying thing about this, is that Donald Trump, as the president of the United States, will have the responsibility of protecting the United States from his own impulses and his desire to pick up his phone and tweet about whoever just pissed him off. And he's already shown the capacity to not be able to handle that. So this puts us in a very difficult position, because on the one side, it's like, it's Twitter and it's a tweet. And we all start, we kind of get a little, I guess flabbergasted is the best word for it, when we see how much coverage his tweets get from the mainstream media. But he now has the ability to set policy with his impulses, with his outburst, with his temper, with his tantrums from Twitter. So the next couple of years, unfortunately, is going to be if he continues down the same path, it's going to be a combination of him using this unbelievable access into the arms into the hands of Americans across the people across the globe. He has this unbelievable access. And so we're going to see over the next 4 years, news reporters covering what he tweets about, but not just because it's ridiculous, but because it carries weight. And I think that's the one thing that I want to really drill down on, is that people have this knee-jerk reaction to say, stop letting Donald Trump distract you with Twitter. But to be honest with you, if you realize the power of the words of the president, then you realize the manner in which Donald Trump uses Twitter. We very well may be getting policy statements via Twitter that we won't get anywhere else. and we are being looked at by the rest of the world, and the rest of the world is watching him and setting their thermostat off of what he says on Twitter. So we don't have an option to not cover what Donald Trump says via Twitter. We don't. And we don't have the option to say, oh, that's a distraction, but this is the important thing. No, everything that he says carries significant weight in the international and the national community. I don't want to be dramatic, but I think you should know by now, we're in trouble, man. Because either someone is going to confiscate his phone and rein him in, or he's going to have this 3 a.m. impulse. We're thinking about whether or not he's going to answer the 3 a.m. call, and he's going to answer the 3 a.m. call, then roll over and get on his iPhone and start tweeting about the call. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how he uses it. But it is from a mass communication perspective, it's a very fascinating, not phenomenal, but fascinating change in the importance of Twitter in American history. Like, Twitter has been propelled into the realms of the fireside chat, because I don't think there's ever been, since FDR, we've seen a consistent decline in the effectiveness of the radio. And then we saw the television come, and it was brand new. It gave this brand new access, but it was still filtered through the lens of media. And then we saw the decline as we saw more media outlets take root, take hold, and competition, it became, all people started watching everything else on television. Right now, it doesn't matter if President Obama gets on national television and start talking about whatever happened. He's barely going to be able to get access from the 3 major outlets, let alone all of the cable channels. So while Obama could get on television and talk about his foreign policy over the last 8 years, most of Americans are like watching Real Housewives of Atlanta. So the competition for radio has been completely blown away. The competition for your attention via television has been completely blown away. The competition for your attention on the internet is completely blown away, except for how Donald Trump uses Twitter. So now Twitter has been lifted up by itself as a medium that's comparable to the revolution that the radio served for FDR, the revolution that television made for, I believe, JFK was about the timeline. And now here we are, Donald Trump with Twitter. And all of this access and power is in the hands of potential madman.